Hey, all right. In this video, what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to talk about the basic parts of language or of writing. This semester, when we talk about writing, we're going to focus on the basic parts of writing. We're not going to focus on really advanced writing techniques because that's not very useful for you. So we just want to find some practical things to focus on to help us understand writing at its most basic level. So that's what this video is going to talk about. Let me bring up my PPT. As you can see here, it's called the basic parts of language or of writing. So that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. So like I just mentioned, in this class, we will focus on building a solid foundation of the fundamentals of writing. That means focus on the really basic features of writing, not the extremely advanced features of writing that are not very practical for you, because I don't think you need to write something extremely advanced. We just want to understand the basic ways to write an essay, for example. So that's what we're going to focus on. Now, let me just point out that in this video, I'm going to refer to two Microsoft Word documents. The first Microsoft Word document is this one right here called Clauses and Phrases. So this is the first one that I'm going to cover, and then we're going to move on to a second file. So just know that the information that's in the slide is also contained in this handout. And so, and actually in this handout is an activity that you will also do. So let's go back to the PowerPoint presentation and let's begin. So let's start focusing on the fundamentals, the basic building blocks of writing, of language. So let's focus on the difference between a sentence, a clause, and a phrase. What is a sentence? A sentence is a group of words with a subject and a verb, and it communicates a complete thought, a complete idea. We use sentences thousands and thousands of times every day. Okay, what is a clause? A clause is a group of words with a subject and a verb. So a subject is a person or thing that does something, and a verb is the action that the subject takes. Now, a phrase, on the other hand, is a group of words without a subject and a verb. So a sentence and a clause, they both have a subject and a verb. A phrase does not have a subject and a verb. All right. So I just want to point out in the clauses versus phrase handout, you can see this chart. We're going to talk about this chart very soon. So here is a sentence that's missing the verb. In the sentence, is the blue part in the morning a clause or a phrase? In the morning. Does in the morning have a subject and a verb? In the morning. Preposition, article, noun, time. There actually is no subject or verb combination. So that is a phrase because there's no subject and verb in the blue part. How about the yellow part? Is this a clause or a phrase? before I go to school. Well, it does have a subject. What is the subject? I. What is the verb? Go. So before I go to school. Subject is I, verb is go. So that's the difference between a clause and a phrase. Clause has a subject and a verb. A phrase doesn't have a subject and a verb combination. So, once again, a sentence is just a group of words with a subject and a verb, and it communicates a complete thought. So, here's an example. In the morning, I do yoga before I go to school. That is a complete thought. If I tell you that sentence, in the morning, I do yoga before I go to school, you will clearly understand what I mean because that is a complete thought. That's a sentence. Okay, now how about a clause? A clause is a group of words with a subject and a verb. And there are two types of clauses. Independent clause and dependent clause. What is the difference between an independent clause and a dependent clause? Well, think about it. Let's say a college student who is living by him or herself has a part-time job, is earning money to pay for tuition, to pay for food, to pay for their books, to pay for their apartment. They don't need their parents to give them money. They are independent. So an independent clause is a complete thought. It is on its own. It is free. A dependent means it depends. It relies on something. So an independent clause, it expresses a complete thought. It can be a sentence. On the other hand, a dependent clause does not express a complete thought. It is not a complete thought. And a dependent clause begins with words such as when, while, if, that, who. These are called subordinating conjunctions. We'll talk about that later. And dependent clauses are not complete sentences. They cannot exist on their own. An independent clause can exist on its own. A dependent clause cannot exist on its own. So let's look at some examples. Here are independent clauses. These are complete thoughts and they exist as an individual sentence. I used to work at Yuxa. Subject, verb, complete thought. Seoul is the capital of Korea. Complete thought, subject and verb. These are complete thoughts, complete sentences. How about dependent clauses? These are incomplete thoughts. While I was working at Yuxa, so it has a subject, I, and it has a verb, was, but it's not a complete thought. If I told you, hey, while I was working at Yuxa, you would ask me, what? Complete your thought. I don't know what happened while you were working at Yuxa. So while I was working at Yuxa is a dependent clause. It is not a complete thought. If it rains tomorrow, this has a subject, it has a verb, rains, but it is not a complete thought. It's not a sentence, a complete sentence. If I told you, if it rains tomorrow, you would be confused. You would ask me, Robin, what happens? What will happen if it rains tomorrow? Complete your thought. So independent clauses, complete thoughts. Dependent clauses, incomplete thoughts. But both independent clauses and dependent clauses, they both have a subject and a verb. So what is a sentence? A sentence has an independent clause. I went to school last Saturday. Here's an independent clause. I, subject, went, verb, complete thought. So a sentence is basically an independent clause. What is the verb? What is the subject? I is the subject, went is the verb. Okay. So in activity 1, in this handout, let me show you again. So this is the handout. As you can see here, here's a chart. So independent clause, it contains a subject and a verb because it's a clause, and it is a complete thought. A dependent clause has a subject and a verb, but it is not a complete thought. A phrase does not have a subject and a verb, nor is it a complete thought. Okay. Activity 1, and here's a nice chart. Here's activity 1. So this is the activity that I'm referring to in this slide. So for this activity, you're just identifying whether the clause is independent or dependent and identifying the subjects and the verbs. So in activity 1, all of the expressions are clauses. They all have subjects and verbs. Some are independent clauses, some are dependent clauses. So here are 2 examples. The trees are pretty in autumn. Okay, this is a clause. It has a subject and a verb. Is that a complete thought? Yes, it is. If I tell you the trees are pretty in autumn, you'll say, oh yeah, they are very pretty. Nice and brown. I love those. So that is an independent clause. So write an I and underline the subject and italicize the verbs. In the second example, if you go to the store today, that is not a complete thought because you don't know what will happen or what will happen if you go to the store today. If I tell you, if you go to the store today, you'll say, Robin, finish your thought. So that is a dependent clause. And what is the subject? You, and the verb is go. And as you can see here, the dependent clause begins with if. Let me go back to this handout. Let's go back to the top. So dependent clauses contain a subject and a verb, but do not express a complete thought. A dependent clause begins with a subordinate conjunction, such as although, after, as, while, when, until, because. There's so many subordinate conjunctions. So if is very simple. If the sentence or if the clause begins with a subordinate conjunction, such as if, it's dependent. So if you look at these right away, oh, that does not begin with a subordinating conjunction. It's an independent clause. Oh, that begins with the subordinating conjunction. It's a dependent clause. So that's a tip. So for homework, do this activity. Just write I or D in this blank, whether the clause is independent or dependent. Underline the subjects and then italicize the verbs. All right, let us move on. So do that activity for homework. Now let's move on to types of sentences. So we just talked about phrases and clauses. Now let's talk about the three main types of sentences. And for the remaining part of this video, I will be referring to this handout. It is called Simple, Compound, and Complex Sentences. So I'll upload this and you can also take a look at this. And the first page is reference, and then the remaining few pages are activities. So let's continue. So let's take a look at the three main types of sentences. What are they? First one is simple. Okay, there are simple sentences. Compound sentences. Compound means when two things combine. Two things are combined. That's what it means to compound, a compound. Then complex. So simple is kind of basic. Complex is like more advanced. So simple, compound, and complex. Let's take a look at simple sentences. What is a simple sentence? Well, a simple sentence just has one independent clause. We just talked about what an independent clause is. An independent clause has a subject and a verb, and it's a complete thought. Basically, a simple sentence is one independent clause. Check it out. Super simple. I watched a movie. Subject, I, verb, watched. What did I watch? A movie. That is a complete thought. If I told you I watched a movie, you're like, oh, cool. What movie did you watch? You know what I mean. It's a complete thought. I enjoy drinking a glass of wine and eating steak. That has a subject and a verb, complete thought. My wife and I went out for dinner and saw a movie last night. Once again, third sentence has a subject and a verb, and it's a complete thought. These three sentences are simple sentences. Each of them has one independent clause, one complete thought. So as you can see, subject, I watched, verb, what did I watch? A movie. That's the object of the verb. That is a complete thought. How about in the second one? What is the subject? I. What is the verb? Enjoy. What do I enjoy? Drinking a glass of wine and eating steak. Third one. What is the subject? Who? My wife and I. My wife and I. And the verb went out. All right, so simple sentences are actually simple. Just one independent clause. Just one complete thought. That's all. So if we go back to this handout, as you can see, simple sentences have one independent clause. Here's a homework assignment. Very, very simple. Write 3 sentences about yourself, your family, etc. So for example, I have an older brother. I have an older brother. That's a simple sentence. One complete thought. Okay. Now let's move on to the second type of sentence. Compound. So like I said, a compound. What compound means is to combine two things. A, B, compound, together, combining them. All right, so what is a compound sentence? Well, compound sentence has 2 or more independent clauses joined together. What is an independent clause? It's a complete thought. It has a subject and a verb, and it's a complete thought. So a compound sentence combines at least 2 complete thoughts. And it uses conjunctions that join the 2 complete thoughts, the 2 independent clauses, and these are called coordinating conjunctions. There are 7 of these conjunctions. One way to remember these conjunctions is think about fanboys. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. So fanboys. Just so you know, and, but, and so are the 3 most common. And I'm sure it's the same in Korean, of course. So let's take a look at some examples of compound sentences. I went to the movie. That's an independent clause. I went to the movie. That's a complete thought. My friend stayed home. That's an independent clause. That's a complete thought. I went to the movie. My friend stayed home. We can combine them using but. I went to the movie, but my friend stayed home. So this is a compound sentence. So we're taking 2 independent clauses, combining them using fanboys. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. So fanboys, it's like the glue. We're combining 2 things, 2 complete thoughts. Here's another example. I didn't know the answer. That's a complete thought. That's an independent clause. I guessed. I guessed. That's a complete thought. That's an independent clause. We can combine them using fanboys. So now we have a compound sentence. So when we combine simple sentences to make compound sentences, it makes the writing more advanced, like higher level writing. It sounds good. Having only simple sentences doesn't sound good. Sometimes it's good to have simple sentences, but we want to use a variety of simple, compound, complex sentences to make the writing sound better. So take a look here. What are the 2 independent clauses in the top sentence? 2 independent clauses, the 2 complete thoughts. I went to the movie and my friend stayed home. Down here, I didn't know the answer. I guessed. So every underlined part is an independent clause. What is an independent clause? It is a complete thought that has a subject and a verb. So what are the subjects? So take a look. What is the subject in this underlined part? I. What is the subject in this underlined part? My friend. Down here, I. Okay. What are the verbs? In this independent clause, went. In this independent clause, stayed. In this independent clause, didn't know. And in this one, guessed. All right. Pretty simple. So a simple sentence is just a complete thought, just an independent clause. A compound sentence, at least 2 simple sentences combined using fanboys. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Fanboys. These are called coordinating conjunctions. These are the glue, the things that combine the 2 independent clauses together to create a compound sentence. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. There are only 7. Only 7. All right. So in these 2 sentences, what are the coordinating conjunctions? What's the glue? In the top sentence, but. In the bottom sentence, so. Okay. All right, for activity 2, and let me just, once again, go back to this handout. In activity 2, there are 5 compound sentences. This is super simple. All you need to do is underline the 2 independent clauses in each compound sentence and italicize the word, the coordinating conjunction, the fanboys that joins them. So let's take a look at an example. You could get a job